Good morning, you guys. I hope you're doing well. I'm doing my best to slow down in the garden and share some thoughts. I feel like these garden thoughts, I have a different stump or a different log for each garden thought, but I really want to share some thoughts around what's going on in the world and really try and send it through my lens in regard to how it relates to bigger picture stuff like gardens and gardening patterns and things like that. As far as my inspiration or thoughts that align with me, I definitely recommend the work of Charles Eisenstein, a really great thinker, and similarly seeing patterns, I also appreciate the work of Teal Swan. So those two have influenced my perspective quite a bit. But yeah, so I figured I could share it with you guys through my lens and maybe also give some, insights or empowerment as far as moving forward, things that I've been doing myself to create the world that I do want to live in. So I think that, and we're also going to get some mosquitoes. I feel that it's we just had a couple big rains here in Houston, and so they're coming out in force now that it's summertime. So the core pattern right now is fear, right? This fear is really important to understand in order to be able to move forward and take action from a place of awareness, because fear has this really powerful influence over our ability to think critically. Fear is very reactive, but the pattern, I guess, and I don't have an outline, I don't have a plan for this, so it might be all over the place, but the pattern of fear that I want to talk about is how fear itself is a separation, pushing away, or a resistance to something. And in our society, hopefully you guys can see or have seen how there's this pattern of separation, pattern of polarization that is kind of running through all these different aspects. So like it's really easy to see in politics, right? It's completely polarized. It's one side or the other. It's yes or no. It's on or off. It's good or bad. And so fear polarizes. Fear puts us in this state of, here is me, here's the thing I'm afraid of. These two must never come together and meet. And so I think in recognizing that pattern, we can start to evaluate whether that fear is really serving us or not. Because fear, although it has this great, natural design as far as like self-preservation, it's something that we all know, or can see in so many ways how it hurts the individual, or can hurt the individual who is under the influence of it. It can cause them to not step forward into their growth. Like as a child growing up, if they're afraid of, trying new things, they're not going to expand their awareness, they're not going to expand their capabilities, they're not going to grow. And even with grown-ups, with, connections and relationships, we can have fear that keeps us from moving forward. So fear has, some negative shadow aspects to it. So the reason I think it's important is because it is this pattern of separation that is the source of a lot of the suffering, a lot of the destruction of the planet, a lot of the discord that we see comes from that pattern of separation. So just how, it's our ability to separate from the planet that allows us to just, strip mine or, exploit something else, to, take resources. If we didn't feel so disconnected, we would not participate in that relationship in the same way. Hopefully, that makes sense as far as separation and planetary and as far as like how the Western culture is very unsustainable because of how separate it perceives different things. The resources, the capitalist system is that of this side of a transaction, I'm going to try and get the most from you, I'm going to try and get the most from you. They're separate. They're not, a familial, they're not a connection where there is that mutual desire for mutualism or well-being of the other. And so at its core, that is the pattern that must shift in order to heal. So I'm not trying to come from a place of like knowing, what the universe needs to become or what's right or what's wrong or all these things, but that the suffering that we're experiencing, the violence, the fighting in and among different elements, the natural destruction, all these things, that's the source of it. And so as individuals, rather than like, I'm going to have to jump back to this one, but like, since we are not an authority in control of everything on the planet, making it to, do whatever we want, we have to come at this from a different approach. We have to remember or recognize our connection, but then look at how we ourselves as individuals can heal that pattern within our own, selves, within our own experience, and start to move away from a paradigm of separation. So that's kind of the core of this video that I feel needs to be made more awareness toward. This needs to be spread, is that it is just this belief in separation that is manifesting in all these different ways. And the belief in separation is tantamount, paramount, whatever, to the approach to the virus. So, I mean, in case you're not aware, there are different types of approaches to medicine. Like allopathy, whatever you want to call it, is not the only way to approach health. And even though the majority of the population might be locked in, that they only receive their perspective, their information from that very narrow place, hopefully that can broaden it. Like, wait, you mean there's different approaches to disease? But what allopathy is that belief in separation. Allopathy is the attacking of disease as if it is the bad thing or the other. So that was just to help illustrate the pattern. So I got Peggy's here. Let me pause for a second. All right. So why this is important to recognize is that pursuing the eradication of the disease through the allopathic approach of destroying it is not always viable. Like, it's as fundamentally flawed as just trying to fly by flapping your wings really hard. You might not. We have to recognize that we can't get there, that there are limitations to this idea of control. Allopathy is like domination, eradication, control. That wasn't a good analogy, but but just that it might not be the best or only approach, and it might have some really devastating consequences. I think that's probably the bigger thing for awareness and getting the awareness out there, is that these approaches can be flawed or unsuccessful and have really severe consequences. So I'm going to try and convince you to see different options, to look past the route of turning towards the government and the mainstream medical Western establishment of medicine as the only option or only way to handle this situation. So I'm going to try my best to not go into like how they are wrong, and that that creates more separation, polarization. How this approach is destructive. Like, it's not going to help us to heal for me to go that route and say, this is wrong and I am right. So instead, I'd like to go towards this is the pattern, this is where it's leading, and really you end up spending a lot of time with how we are empowered creators of reality. So yeah, so we see the pattern. The pattern is that of control being put outside of the individual. So rather than at all these different levels, at the individual health level, it's like control for my health is not me. I don't have responsibility by, like, you know, taking vitamin C or getting outside, getting fresh air, or, you know, wearing a mask if I feel I need it. My health is the responsibility of everybody else having to wear a mask, right? So that's putting responsibility someplace else. And the same with the collective approach to it. It's like turning towards government to make this mandate or this rule. Is like they're going to keep us safe because they're going to lock everybody in, you know, for this amount of time, and they're going to only let these businesses be open, and it's this, do this, and it's like, you know, putting responsibility, you know, anywhere and everywhere but on ourselves. And yeah, talk about unconscious behaviors. So that's hopefully a pattern. With some awareness we can go, okay, you know, let's try and change it, because you can have the same perspective as far as, like, you know, coronavirus is a really serious thing and this and that, without making the responsibility for handling it somebody else's. That's just huge. You could be the most afraid of it person in the world, and if you really took responsibility for yourself, you would buy yourself one of those self-contained bubbles, or you would stay in your house and just have, you know, people deliver food through vacuum sealed, you know, what you would do things for yourself instead of trying to control everybody else around you, everything else, control the external. And so that's a huge pattern that hopefully can shift, because when we try and control everything else and make it the responsibility for our health, for our happiness, for our well-being, we are destined to be really frustrated, to be really unsuccessful, to be really upset. There's just, you know, conflict, violence. There's a lot of things that we are manifesting and bringing into the world because of that. And so let's make that shift and take responsibility for ourselves and for our individual actions, and not be putting so much on trying to control others. You know, that's like, it's literally a paradigm of control is the virus. So, you know, part of me that will totally polarize you and, you know, get you resisting everything I say afterwards. But that, you know, to me, the real danger is the fear and the polarizing, you know, situation, and the belief in control, you know, the approach to it. Those are the real dangers. You know, the real virus is the fear. It's not some subatomic, whatever, submicroscopic virion or whatever they've decided to name it. You know, it's that's not a real danger. You know, disease is so natural. Like, oh my gosh, got fire blight all over the place in here. I've got, you know, fungal things attacking trunks, and disease is so important. It is part of a system. For us to try and run from disease, like, this might be a tangent, but it's still worthy of awareness. Like, oh my gosh, you cannot eradicate disease. That's like trying to eradicate respiration, you know, because you've decided it's bad. It's not going to go well for life to try and be like, oh, we're going to end disease. Like, they're never going to get rid of the coronavirus. It's a secret, right? It's never going away. That'd be like saying that you could eliminate the cold or eliminate flu so that they don't exist anymore. So pursuing that route immediately is like, wait, what? Whoa, what are we doing? How is this? You know, it's really backwards. So what I would encourage is the perspective of embracing death as part of life, embracing disease as part of life, as part of an element in a living system, and moving forward from that perspective, because I do not think that's being done enough. So that's an individual thing that we can do in ourselves, is just check in and go, okay, how am I feeling towards death? How am I feeling towards other people around me dying? How am I feeling towards myself dying? We have a really, really crappy relationship with death. In essence, it's the relationship of just like and I'm talking collective here, right? But it's like, you know, run away, run away. How often have we heard, you know, the propaganda, but the comments about, you know, it'll save a life. You know, one life is worth, you know, everything. Like, the death is the ultimate evil, and we're all just going to die anyway. So it's, yeah, there's just a lot of lack of awareness there. Now, to get back to the core of the video, which is about that personal empowerment to move forward, you know, with this newer awareness. The reality is that we do have free will, that fear only has the power that we give it, right? That's, I think we can all grasp it in regard to fear fairly easily. Like, you know, that the person that's afraid of, you know, heights or whatever, it gives it all this importance and doesn't, you know, it hides away from it. If that person did not give that fear that power, right, then they wouldn't be afraid of heights. They would just climb that tree, or they would do that, you know, whatever, tightrope up high. Not necessarily anything, you know, specific, but just that fear is the disease. Fear is, you know, like, it isn't about anything else other than the fear and the belief in the fear. And so the parallel where I want to take us next is that authority has no power beyond the power that we give it. And a lot of actions right now are being dictated by the fear of the authority, fear of, you know, consequences, fear of what somebody else will do. Now, there's also all the actions being dictated by fear, you know, that the authority has created, or fear, let's not get to that, all right, that they're being dictated by fear itself. So we have actions of people like, all right, I'm really afraid, so I'm gonna stay inside and I'm gonna social distance and all this, right? Actions dictated by fear. But we also have people that are going, all right, well, I'm gonna put on this mask because I'm afraid I'll get in trouble, or I'm gonna, you know, stand way back here and not give anybody a handshake because I'm afraid they might, you know, be upset if I get closer. So all of these actions are being done out of fear. And that's, you know, that's the core pattern. But what that last part, why it's really important, is that authority is the source of fear in this situation, right? There was no natural spread of the virus. This wasn't, you know, a virus that, you know, killed a lot of people and then those people, you know, shared with others. I mean, with any honesty, and you look back at this, that's not how it spread at all. No, this was spread through media, through the people in a position to be authority over information. So that's still a form of authority, but this was spread by authority, and that's a really important awareness. I didn't hear about coronavirus because, you know, my aunt or my uncle or my brother, you know, like, no, I heard about coronavirus because it was blared across the media 24/7, be afraid, be afraid, be afraid. So here's why it's important. Authority only has the power that we give it. We are so much more powerful than we believe or give ourselves credit. We are manifesting reality at every moment, at every second. And so, you know, by giving that power to authority, by handing it over and saying, hey, yes, you can, you know, control my actions, decide what I do because you're going to make me afraid of a consequence, we're setting things up for some struggles. We're setting ourselves up for unhappiness because we've separated our well-being from ourselves. We're no longer responsible for it, right? It's in the hands of the other. It's in the hands of whatever the government does. And so I want individuals to consciously decide to take that back and to create the world that they want to live in. If you want to live in a world filled with fear, then perpetuate that. Go and shout fear from the rooftops and tell everybody to be afraid of something that you've never seen or smelled or tasted or touched or heard, all right? And you've probably even never seen a person, you know, with it. You've probably, maybe what, 5% people could say that they have physically, you know, seen somebody because they've whisked off to, you know, behind the curtain. The man behind the curtain whisked them off to, you don't get to see them. You don't get to see what actually happened. You don't get to talk with them. So the awareness is just, it's really low for what actually is going on. And so I want us to take that responsibility back for creating reality how we want it to be. And that is what I've been doing. And so I have, a few small things. Probably the biggest thing, before I get into these little detailed things, is be aware of the fear and consciously choose whether or not to be afraid. Okay, that's of the virus, that's of the cops enforcing the edicts, that's of anything. Choose whether or not fear is really serving you in that moment. All right, I got some distraction. The chickens are behind me and talking it up. But I want us to look back towards schooling, because it was in our schooling years where we had ourselves being conditioned to accept authority, right? That's what schooling was about. We had the free will, our ability to, choose like that pounded out of us because, well, we needed, we needed love and connection, as far as survival. And so we were conditioned to accept somebody else dictating our feelings, thoughts, and actions. And chicken distractions. So we go back to that, and what I want to capture is that in schooling, for me at least, there was this energy of awareness of, a recognition of, that it was arbitrary, and that, just because a teacher said, to do something, to sit here, to be there, like it wasn't actually true. And so, like there were definitely students as well that, fully accepted it and, did their homework well every, day, and did all the things that the teacher asked and really worked their best to gain that approval of authority. And so I get that, but I think there were also many of us that could see what was really going on, those of us that, shared our homework with each other because, the burdens that authority had placed on us, the relationship that authority had with us was, so weak. It was so, coercive. It was so dominating and impressive that we instead helped each other out. Like we found the relationships to make do, like cheating or whatever, that's bad, right? We did that in response to the, the arbitrary oppression of the authority as a way of like really connecting. Sorry, I got jumped onto cheating. I cheated in high school. Just thinking, the reason I went there, I really should have notes for these kind of things. The reason I went there is because it became a game. It became about finding a way through the system, through all these, interactions, relationships, what to do in order to move towards what we wanted. Sure, we wanted good grades, we wanted to still have friendship, relationship, we still wanted time for ourselves, we still wanted freedom. So that's why I'm saying that was my path, that's what I took. And so yeah, for somebody else it might have been that path of just pursuing validation through authority and doing what authority wanted them to, and bringing an apple to the teacher each day. I brought an apple too. I brought gifts to the teacher sometimes too. So that gets back to, we all have our own path to walk. But the core point of what I was trying to get to is that in this present moment, we are being put back into that grade school environment where teacher tells us what to do, where teacher controls our actions. And I'm saying it is now more time than ever to pass notes under the table when the teacher isn't looking, right? To, talk to your friend ahead and say, okay, keep your, Scantron over to this side of the desk because, I need some help. Or to help each other out, to not, go all in with the control of the authority, because this teacher does not have your best interests. No one can have your best interests but you. No one can know them but you. And so yeah, so we need to take action from that place of free will, of freedom despite the consequences. I know a person who used their free will to choose to take down caution tape from a playground where the government wrapped it in caution tape to keep kids from playing, and just getting to see that behind that. So actually, the whole story of this person that did this, caution tape was taken down, and the city put it back up a couple weeks later. Caution tape was taken down again. The city put it back up a couple of weeks later, and caution tape was taken down a fourth time. But the fourth time, it was no longer by that individual. The community had caught on, and the community decided that they wanted to be able to use the playground as well for their kids. And so what I think is really powerful, and this story was longer and more details, and there's more energetics and fear involved, but that free will and that conscious creation of the world that we want to live in. Like, do you want a world where kids are allowed to play on playgrounds with each other? Do you want a world where you can play team sports together? Do you want a world where you can go social dancing? You have to create it. You cannot sit back and say, oh, maybe authority will let me go social dancing at the end of class or what. Like, that's ridiculous. At the end of this month or the end of next month. Not happening. Not at all. No, this is, yeah. That's a cop-out. So I'm saying create it, and that's what I'm trying to do in my life, and seeing how it takes somebody to take that lead, to be that person that will, pass the note or take down the caution tape, whatever it is, and then others will go, yeah, this is the normal that I want to live in. We want to consciously create the new normal, not let authority dictate it to us. That's huge. That's so important. What kind of world do you want to live in? So yeah, so here are some things that I think, we can do to challenge authority. Well, the biggest thing is that authority is constantly in contradiction to itself because it's incredibly arbitrary. So one thing we can do to diminish that pattern is to emphasize and highlight the dissonance, the self-contradictions. So, it's great if you're at that point where you can at least, have the awareness for, violating social distancing in order to enforce social distancing. That one's huge. That happens all the time, like at stores and things, where they're like forcing everybody into a confined space or walking past each other in order to keep everybody more distant from each other. And then I brought some things. This is my recommended face mask. It's called cheesecloth. I actually have yet to wear a face mask. Kind of something I'm proud of. I've had to do this move, right? This is also a great face mask for, oh, I just totally ruined the audio. But that's a great face mask for, just getting into a store and moving past. And but those actions, like these two things, that's about challenging the logic, and it will trigger a lot of fear in people. And so it's really good to, like I'm laughing about it here, but when you're out there, you got to have a lot of awareness for what other people are experiencing and feeling. And so if you are going to go that route, try and be really sensitive to keeping social distance as far as helping them to feel safer, or over communicating as far as what their comfort level is and connecting with them on an individual level to help them process the fear. But I think it'd be beautiful to see a bunch of people where it's all forced, wearing cheesecloth, because it will help wake up the other people. That's the real key. When somebody has this blind belief in authority, it as far as to keep them safe, it takes critical thinking to come out of it. It takes questioning, and that's what I want to bring more of. Find ways to connect and create that environment of questioning. And then the other two things I brought that I wanted to show you was, so I'm a junk hound, right? I have my junk piles here. I got this from a trash pile, a swing set on the curb. And it just so happens that at a public park that I really care about, they took down all the swings. That was actually in response to the 4th time that the caution tape was taken down. They physically removed the swings from the swing set. So, so yeah, I was thinking, you know, if I want to live in a world where children are allowed to play on a playground and swing on a swing set, I'm going to have to create it. I got to take responsibility for that. And then these are also junk pile, and these I wanted to put up there to offer because I know that there have been places where authority has taken down public basketball goals, and yeah, and that seems to me to be really sad. So if we want to create a reality where we can play basketball, we have to go out and do that. And the action of putting back up a swing or putting back up a basketball goal may seem really small, like it's and totally understanding that they're probably going to get taken down, stolen again. But we have to fight for the reality that we want to live in. We have to do things like that, like say, you know, I'm going to put back up an improvised, you know, basketball goal. I'm going to start making swings out of rope if I have to, you know, like we have to work to consciously create our reality. And so that's what this video was about in the end. So I know it was a little rambly, but feel free to start conversation in the comments below. Probably will get myself censored in the YouTube channel. No, hopefully not. But we can't allow those kind of fears, right? I just had fear creeping in. So live without fear today, you know, and live in a way that creates the reality you want to live in, consciously. You know, if you're in that community, connect with that community. Bring them up with you. Don't just run away from them and go hide in the country and you live in a hobbit house and on the hillside, but really consciously decide what is right for you and what future you want to create. All right, you guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll catch y'all next time. Peace.